State of Texas, DSHS has informed public health departments that they have adopted a revised definition for COVID-19 probable cases.
So for confirmed case, it stays the same. You still just need PCR. But now they've added a probable case definition. So that still gets counted towards the case count. It's different. It's not confirmed. It's probable, but it's still a case. So at the end of this definition, there are 15 different options on how you could be classified as a probable case. Based on this diagram and what they report, there's a total of 17 cases now. One is still only confirmed because that was that original index case who then had all these contacts underneath in orange. And all the rest of them became probable, but they are still considered a case.
It has the potential to be a very significant event for us here in Texas and here in Collin County, as the state now has elected to adopt this new probable definition. If you have a subjective fever and you have a headache and you live in Collin County, you now meet the qualifications to be a probable COVID patient. It is remarkable how low the standard is now. If you have one of the major symptoms, you have a cough or you have shortness of breath, and you live in Collin County, then you can satisfy the definition for a probable COVID case. But I'm very concerned that we absolutely could see the numbers jump very rapidly in a way that actually is not indicative of what we're seeing here in the community in the public health department.
Makes a lot of sense. Confirmed cases in America. Confirmed deaths. They're doing the same thing with deaths. Florida is, crazy amount of testing. Crazy amount of cases. 244,000 now. And this is how many deaths. And you got Texas, 240,000. California, 304,000 cases. 6,851 deaths. It's crazy. Where's Washington? Washington was up there last week. I was going to do this. Look at us here. See, I guarantee the case count's a lot less. Guaranteed. They've been using propables a lot longer than the May 18th. Okay? But hey, we got proof that they're doing it. Look at the death count here, case count. And we're just, they're taking everything from you. So, it's proof that in these hot states, we're about to show proof. Viruses don't live in sunlight, in hot climate weather. They die very quickly. Diseases, whatever it may be, it dies at surfaces. It's a bunch of lies. Just more fear mongering. But this is what we're looking at. So that probable count here really shows how much North Carolina. It's crazy how much all these have jumped. When we had New York, Washington State, California were some of the craziest numbers. So, anyways, the probable causes and all that is definitely, that was one scenario. One person equals 17 people. They're just automatically adding to it. Another case is you're positive. They go and trace, contact traced everybody. For one instance, a UFC fighter, they contact traced 190 people and told them all to quarantine. That was in Florida. Guaranteed they counted 190 people for that one person because they had to quarantine you. So there's 15 different ways to do probables and to get a positive number on top of the one person positive. So these numbers are not real. All these numbers are not real.
Within the conditions we've tested to date, The virus in droplets of saliva survives best in indoors and dry conditions. The virus does not survive as well in droplets of saliva.
What did they tell us to do in the beginning? Stay inside. Don't go outside. So, they don't know what they're talking about, and now they're finding out, which we all knew, not to stay indoors. Many people have come out. It's plain to see.
Saliva, and that's important because a lot of testing being done is not necessarily being done, number one, with the COVID-19 virus, and number two, in saliva or respiratory fluids. And thirdly, the virus dies the quickest in the presence of direct sunlight under these conditions. And when you look at that chart, look at the aerosol as you breathe it. You put it in a room, 70 to 75 degrees, 20% humidity, low humidity. It lasts, the half-life is about an hour. But you get outside and it cuts down to a minute and a half. Very significant difference the half-life is about an hour. But you get outside and it cuts down to a minute and a half. Very significant difference when it gets hit with UV rays. Hour. But you get outside and it cuts down to a minute and a half. Very significant difference.
Wow. Let's say that again. Then how did we get these in the middle of the summer? In the middle of the summer, how did we get these numbers here? How? It's just, how are we getting these numbers? You know? Crazy, right?
Things in the question that you just asked. One is the number of cases that are being reported as asymptomatic. And so we hear from a number of countries that X percentage of them are reported as not having symptoms, or that they are in their pre-symptomatic phase, which means it's a few days before they actually develop severe symptoms. In a number of countries, when we go back and we discuss with them, one, how are these asymptomatic cases being identified? Many of them are being identified through contact tracing. And so, which is what we would want to see, in that you have a known case, you find your contacts, they're already in quarantine, hopefully, and some of them are tested, and then you pick up people who may have asymptomatic or no symptoms or even mild symptoms. The other thing we're finding is that when we actually go back and say how many of them were truly asymptomatic, we find out that many have really mild disease, very mild disease. They're not quote unquote COVID symptoms, meaning they may not have developed fever yet, they may not have had a significant cough, or they may not have shortness of breath, but some may have mild disease. Having said that, we do know that there can be people that are truly asymptomatic and PCR positive. The second part of your question is what proportion of asymptomatic individuals actually transmit. So the way that we look at that is we look at these individuals need to be followed carefully over the course of when they're detected and looking at secondary transmission. We have a number of reports from countries who are doing very detailed contact tracing. They're following asymptomatic cases, they're following contacts, and they're not finding secondary transmission onward. It's very rare. And that much of that is not published in the literature. From the papers that are published, there's one that came out from Singapore, looking at a long-term care facility. There are some household transmission studies where you follow individuals over time and you look at the proportion of those that transmit onwards.
No.
We are constantly looking at this data, and we're trying to get more information from countries to truly answer this question. It still
Communist
appears
countries.
to be rare that an asymptomatic individual actually transmits onward.
Taking all your rights.
What we really want to be focused on is following the symptomatic cases. If we followed all of the symptomatic cases, because we know that this is a respiratory pathogen that passes from an individual through infectious droplets, if we actually followed all of the symptomatic cases, isolated those cases, followed the contacts and quarantined those contacts, we would drastically reduce. I would love to be able to give a proportion of how much transmission we would actually stop, but it would be a drastic reduction in transmission. If we could focus on that, I think we would do very, very well in terms of suppressing transmission. But from the data we have, it still seems to be rare that an asymptomatic person actually transmits onward to a secondary individual.
Didn't anybody, and that's why they're saying kids can go back to school and people that have asymptomatics. I was looking up this is the first 15 weeks. First 4 months and 2 compared to, this is deaths from 2019, the first 15 weeks in 2020. So the death count here is the total, each week it shows, but it's a total of 865,181 for 2019, first 15 weeks. 819,659 deaths in 2020 already. COVID-19 is killing so many people. Why are we seeing a drop in deaths? So COVID-19 actually killed 45,522 fewer people died this year compared to last year. So don't listen to everything you're told. That's for sure. Because that's what's happening. And it doesn't take much just to do a little. Just look at the real research. Look at the real things that are coming out. The things that they put out a little bit here and there, but they're keeping the hype of this pandemic. If you were to do the same thing with the flu, you'd have tons of cases, very little deaths, same scenario, and they'd be doing the same thing. But with the coronavirus, they're so scared, acting like they don't know anything about it. And it's COVID-19. It's a different COVID. And I don't even know anybody with COVID. I know plenty of people that have flu. Every year I know plenty of people that have flu. I don't know anybody with COVID, so that should say something as well. And the way we handled this pandemic, I don't even agree with. But anyways, that's some numbers out there just to take a look at, and something you can chew on. It's I'm sure there's a lot more I could have dug into, but very interesting to see, and some very interesting times we're in. So I'd love to keep all you guys in prayer, and hopefully everybody's is safe and doing as good as they can. And God bless you guys. May God put a blanket of protection on all of you.